Hi, welcome back. My name is Ashley Beal and I'm a registered dietitian. Today we are going to be making sweet potato and black bean enchiladas. If you've seen my enchilada casserole recipe, you know that I love enchiladas because it's so easy to throw together and either cook for a larger group or have extra for leftovers. For ingredients today, you will need some sweet potatoes. My grocery store has these wonderfully pre-cut sweet potatoes. If you've ever tried to dice a potato or a sweet potato, you know that it can be pretty labor intensive. So this is my shortcut for that. It's a little over a pound of sweet potatoes. So if you are using regular sweet potatoes, maybe 1 large or 2 medium sweet potatoes would be fine. Check and see if your grocery store has these. It definitely makes the cooking process a little easier. Then we will need 1 yellow onion, some taco seasoning, some salsa of your choice, a 19-ounce can of red enchilada sauce. They have mild, medium, and hot versions. I got the mild today. If you're sensitive to spicy flavors, just keep an eye on that. A 15-ounce can of black beans or any other kind of beans that you like. We're also gonna need about 8 tortillas. I'm using these burrito-sized tortillas here. You can absolutely play around with the size. If you're doing a smaller size, you'll probably need between 10 and 12 of those. Then some kind of cooking oil to roast our sweet potatoes. About 2 cups of shredded cheese. To top off my enchiladas, I'm going to grab 2 avocados and some sour cream. For equipment today, you will need a large cutting board with a medium to large knife, a 9x12 baking dish, a baking pan lined with a silicone mat or some kind of aluminum foil. And lastly, just a can opener to open our enchilada sauce and beans. To get started, we are going to prepare our sweet potatoes for roasting. Before we do that, let's preheat our oven to 375 degrees. Now that my oven is preheating, I'm going to take my sweet potato chunks and I'm actually gonna cut them a little bit further so that way they're small enough to fit in my enchiladas. This is where it can be a little tedious if you have a whole sweet potato. Another option, if your grocery store does not have diced sweet potatoes, is to actually roast your sweet potato. I believe you can even microwave it, just enough to get the inside soft. And then instead of having roasted diced sweet potatoes, you can kind of do more of like a mashed sweet potato and spread that inside of your enchilada instead. But for today, we are just going to take our knife and carefully cut our sweet potatoes into smaller pieces, maybe like a 1/2 inch to 1 inch. They don't have to be uniform. I know working with a knife in the kitchen can be a little stressful. One of the most important safety features of a knife is making sure that it's sharp. So that way you know it's doing its job, and it actually reduces the risk of accidentally cutting yourself. So if you had a set of knives, it's not a bad idea to invest in a knife sharpener. So that way it's safer and easier for you to cut and your knives last a little longer. You get more of your money's worth. Okay, I have my sweet potatoes chopped into smaller pieces. Having them into smaller pieces is actually gonna help them cook more quickly. Now grabbing my baking pan lined with a silicone mat or some kind of aluminum foil, I am going to take my sweet potatoes, lay them in an even layer along my baking sheet. I'm going to take some of my olive oil and just kind of drizzle over top, making sure that each sweet potato will be nicely covered. And then I'm gonna take my taco seasoning here and lightly sprinkle it over the sweet potatoes. Maybe about 2 to 3 tablespoons worth. And then your remaining taco seasoning you can put aside and use for a later recipe. Now, taking my hands, or you can take a mixing spoon, I am just gonna mix up the sweet potatoes in the seasoning and the oil, making sure that each sweet potato is lightly coated in both. That way each bite gets nice little flavor. And then you'll want to spread it out once again in a single layer, making sure all the sweet potatoes are lying flat. Rinse off your hands. And then you can see that each of my sweet potatoes are nicely coated and seasoned. My oven is all preheated and ready to go. So now I'm going to place the sweet potatoes in there for about 20 to 25 minutes. I'll probably check on them at the 20-minute mark, maybe toss them around if I want, and then put them in for an additional 5. Don't forget to set your timer for 20 minutes. It will sneak up on us quickly. While we wait for those to roast, I'm going to get my other ingredients ready so that way when the sweet potatoes are done, we can start to assemble our enchiladas. First, let's open and rinse off our black beans. Rinsing the lid first. What we'll want to do for this recipe is run some water over the black beans a couple of times, just so that way they are nice and dry and won't make our enchiladas soggy. So just rinse them off a few times. If you need to put it in a bowl and rinse them off that way, that's also fine. It may also save you a little bit of time. Now for this part, you can absolutely leave the beans in the can. I'm gonna put them in my bowl so that way once we start to make the enchiladas, I can just kind of spoon them out. We can also give them an additional rinse in the bowl. And there we have our rinsed off black beans. Next, I'm going to do the enchilada sauce, rinsing off the top and using my can opener to open it. Then we can set that and our beans aside. Now we can dice our onion. So chop off both sides of the onion, making a little cut down one of the sides, so that way it's easier to peel off the outer layer, like that. Then I will just cut it in half, like this, cutting it lengthwise, all the way down. And then 1 or 2 times down this side, so they're in smaller pieces. These I'm actually going to add to our sweet potatoes after that 20-minute mark to let them cook just slightly in the oven with them. So again, slice down the side. And then once or twice the other way. So I have my little pieces. Okay, and we can set those aside as well. The next thing that we can do is take our baking pan and instead of spraying it down with an oil spray like I typically would to prevent sticking, we're actually gonna take some of the enchilada sauce and just very lightly spread that on the bottom. So you can move things around like this, just like that. Now open up your salsa and have some kind of spoon handy so that way we can easily pour them into the enchiladas. I have about 5 minutes left on my roasted sweet potatoes. So once that timer goes off, I will bring them back, mix in some of the diced onions, put them back in the oven for about 5 minutes, and then we'll be ready to prepare our enchiladas. Okay. You can see that my sweet potatoes are nice and roasted. Now I'm going to add a couple of my onions to the sweet potatoes very carefully because the pan is hot. Okay, that looks good. Add a little bit more oil just for the onions. And then taking one of my topping spoons, I'm just going to give them a good mix. I can feel that my sweet potatoes are cooked very well and they're starting to soften. Now for this next part, what I usually like to do is bump our oven up to 425 degrees because this is the temperature that we're gonna be cooking our enchiladas in. So I'm gonna go ahead and increase my oven temperature to 425 degrees. And now that that temperature is set, I'm going to put my sweet potatoes and onions back in the oven. You don't have to wait for it to preheat. That's the bonus of this. And then set my timer for 5 minutes. Okay, I have my sweet potatoes and my onions here. I'm just gonna set them aside. Now these will be hot, so if you are cooking with little ones or just don't want to take that risk, you're always welcome to let these cool off for a little while before we start to work with them. Or you can also transfer them to a different dish, so that way you don't have to worry about the baking pan. Whichever way you decide to go, you want to have your sweet potatoes and onions right here, your beans, and your salsa, so that way we can make our enchiladas. Now, taking my cutting board from before, I am going to lay down one of my tortillas, and I'm going to take a few of my sweet potatoes and just kind of lay it down the middle. The benefit of having larger tortillas, in my opinion, is that you can fill it with more and it won't affect how it closes when you roll it. So I'm gonna put about that much of my sweet potato mixture. Then I'm gonna lay some of the black beans over top, like that. And then just drizzle a little bit of salsa over top. You can also use a spoon for this too, if that makes it easier. Now, once we roll our enchiladas, we will be topping it off with some cheese, but it never hurts to have more cheese. So I like to put a little bit of that over top as well, just to have some on the inside. And now one of my favorite things about a flour tortilla is that it's so much easier to roll without breaking. If you're using a corn tortilla today, I do recommend that you put them in the microwave for about 15 to 20 seconds just to get them nice and warm. That way they're a little bit easier to fold. But whichever one you're using, what you're gonna wanna do is fold in the sides like this. You can see that when I laid out my sweet potato mixture, I left about 1 inch on each side, so that way I could fold in my sides, bring the other all the way across, and then you're just going to tuck it in and roll it all the way, just like that. So leaving the open flap on the bottom, you are then going to start to gently layer your enchiladas in the baking pan over top of the enchilada sauce like this. And then we'll just do this for the remaining enchiladas. Take some of your roasted sweet potatoes and onions, top it off with your black beans, leaving about 1 inch on either side, some salsa, very carefully and lightly, and lastly some cheese. And then let's practice again. Fold it into the side, bring this all the way over, tuck it in, and then roll it. Then the flap side down, we're gonna put right on the bottom of the enchilada pan, so that way it holds together. Don't be worried if your first couple of enchiladas turn out a little wonky, or maybe you have a hole in one. It's all okay, it's all gonna get eaten the same way. And I find that when I try a new recipe like this that requires repetition of something, I usually start to get it as I go on. So try not to get too frustrated with the first couple of ones that you make. Okay. All 8 of my enchiladas fit on there very nicely. Now here's the fun part. Before we put on the enchilada sauce and the cheese, take some of your oil. I usually like to use like a spoon or maybe like a pastry brush and just kind of lightly spread some of the oil on the tops of your tortillas. Then we're gonna put it in the oven before we add the enchilada sauce and the cheese, so that way the oil helps the tortillas get nice and crispy. One thing that I feel like people are often worried about with things like oil and different types of fat sources is that they are going to be bad for them, or that having fat in a dish is not healthy. But the truth is that you really want to be able to balance out your fats with your other nutrients, like your carbohydrates or your proteins. And fat is a very important nutrient that we need in our diets. And not only that, but it contributes to the flavor of most of our foods. So if you've ever find that some of your foods end up being really bland or just boring, or you're not very excited to eat them, try and see if you have any fats in them. That could really help. Okay, I have a little bit of oil lined into each of my enchiladas. So I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the oven for 10 minutes, and then we will pull them out and finish them. Okay, I have my timer set for 10 minutes. So while I wait, I'm just going to tidy up my area and put away some of the things that we don't need anymore. Put aside the rest of your enchilada sauce, your cheese, and any toppings you're gonna be using today, and then we'll tidy up the rest. Grab your other ingredients, set those out, and I will be back when they're done. Okay, now your tortilla shells should be nice and crispy. We are going to take the rest of our enchilada sauce and drizzle over top each enchilada. And then we're gonna do the same with the cheese. And then we will bake them again for another 10 minutes, or until the cheese is bubbly and melted and a little golden brown on the top. And then our enchiladas will be ready. Right, and then you should have your crispy baked enchiladas. I actually ended up putting mine under the broiler for a little over a minute, keeping a very close eye on it, just to kind of get that nice golden brown texture. If you don't feel comfortable using the broiler or don't have time to keep an eye on it, you could also keep it in for an additional 5 minutes, and it'll be similar to this. I have my toppings out and ready to go. And I'm just going to grab one of these enchiladas using some kind of spatula or serving spoon and carefully plate it like that. I did give mine a few extra minutes to cool off, so that way it's not super hot. Then I will take some sour cream, put a little over top, rinse off one of my avocados. I'm gonna cut maybe a third of this avocado, like that. And if you've seen how I like to cut my avocados, I'll actually just slice it while it's still in the skin. So that way pieces all stay together. And then I'll grab a spoon or a fork and just kind of dig it out, like that. And then you'll have your nice little slices, like this. For the remaining avocado, I usually just sprinkle a little bit of lime juice or lemon juice. The acidity in those fruits helps to prevent the avocado from browning. Now for the best part. There's just something about sweet potato, black bean, and avocado combination that is so perfect together. Enchiladas are easily one of my go-tos. And now I have a whole dish full of them. Let me know what you think. Did you try it alongside me? Are you gonna try it? I'd love to hear from you. But either way, thank you so much for cooking with me today, and I'll see you next time.